Hi creatives and welcome back to Agency Academy. Today I'm going to be talking about how to design sustainable packaging for your clients, because either if someone's asked for sustainable packaging or if it's a service that you want to offer because you care about the environment and the ethics of all of the products that we design, this is the perfect video for you. Before I became a designer, I actually studied sustainability and ecology. And so when I started doing packaging, the sustainability aspect of the packaging and the products that I was designing was kind of front and center for me. So it's always been something I really care about. When I got started, I had this thing in my head where I thought, it's all about the materials. But the truth is there's actually so many different things that you can consider when you design sustainable packaging. So to make this video easy to follow, because sustainable packaging really doesn't have to be that difficult, I'm going to be talking about a couple different topics on how to make your packaging way more sustainable. The first thing we're going to talk about is size and weight of your packaging. Second, we're going to be talking about materials. Then we're going to dive into waste, labeling, and finally, ways to give your packaging a second life. So starting off with the size and the weight of your packaging. So you have the product inside, and one of the biggest goals about that is to protect the product that's inside. But also when you're thinking about it, this product has to be assembled, it has to be shipped from where it's manufactured and packaged to the end consumer, so perhaps even to the store and then to the end consumer. And so for each of those steps, if the product is really big and bulky, you will fit way less of them into one pallet. So you have to use more trucks, you have to use more fuel in order to transport that one piece of product. So try to make your packaging as small as possible. You know those like chips bags where you get where only half of it is filled with product and half of it is air? That's a perfect example of what you don't want to do. You really want to create packaging where you're really helping out, the transportation of the product, but you are not taking up a bunch of extra space. Secondly, you want to do the same thing for weight. So if something's really heavy, and it's the packaging that's heavy, not the product that's heavy, you're adding on more fuel to transport this one product. So make sure that all of the packaging that you design is always as small as possible and as light as possible. Next up, we're going to talk about materials. And this is probably the topic that you've maybe thought about the most. And so when it comes to thinking about materials, we often think that things like plastic or cardboard are really kind of bad materials to use because they're not something that is easy to just quickly get more of. However, in the kind of current situation that we're in right now, using products and materials that are widely recycled, like plastic, glass, or cardboard, is actually kind of a good option because consumers know how to recycle them. So they know how to take that product and put it back into the cycle. So that helps with sustainability. Plastic and cardboard, they're really light, they're easy to transport, and we know how those materials behave. So we can make sure that they're easy to ship, that they're easy to get through customs and all these things that are going to reduce waste and going to make the whole process more sustainable. But if you want to dive into a couple more sustainable, more innovative materials, the first thing I would explore would be plant-based plastics. And this is essentially when you're taking the waste products from, let's say, corn production, or you're taking products from algae or from mushroom fiber, and you're using that byproducts to create a fake plastic. And so this usually has very similar properties to normal plastic, and it can be used as a replacement for films, for whole bottles, all these different things. And so I'm going to put a couple links in the description. One is going to be the blog post that goes with this, and there you can find lots of cool, innovative companies that do plant-based plastics. Another one to consider is different types of pulp. So this is essentially the mashed down materials of things like, for example, environmentally certified wood. So it's grown sustainably. It's then, being mashed down into this type of mixture that you can form and shape into things like food containers or other types of vessels for your packaging. Another part of the packaging to consider when it comes to materials is the inks that you're using. So if you're printing anything on a packaging, it usually uses the traditional type of printing, a petroleum-based product. And so that's obviously not super sustainable and something that we would like to stay away from. And almost all printers right now offer plant-based inks. So this is when you're using things like soy, for example, and using the oils in these different products to create plant-based inks. Not only are they more sustainable because you don't have to use petroleum, but they're also much safer to use, they're biodegradable, and it's a great option to use. Similarly, if you're using any kind of plant-based plastics, they can often be colored with natural colorants such as beetroot, for example. So you can get like a pink or a red type of plastic from using these really natural materials and sources. Next up, I want to be talking a little bit about waste, because there's two factors here that play a really big role for if your packaging is sustainable. So your packaging is essentially the transportation vessel for the product that's inside to go from the manufacturer to the end consumer. And if the product and the packaging is damaged somehow in the transport, it will most likely just be thrown away. So if you have that situation where you design packaging that somehow is not resilient to the transportation process, then you will have the packaging and the product itself just be thrown out. And that is such a waste and really not sustainable. So think about the types of materials that you're using. If you're using, let's say a paper packaging to contain your products, you might want to consider doing some sort of water resistant cover as an outer packaging. And so that could be a plant-based plastic, or something else that is going to protect it so that if people are carrying the product from different trucks, it's raining, the product can still be contained and in good condition. Or if, let's say, it's really moist in the transportation, or if some of the product is leaking, you will have protection from this. Another thing to keep in mind on the topic of waste is also the waste of the product and the usability of the product itself. So you've probably had that experience of having, like, let's say maybe a beauty product or a food product where you just can't get the yogurt out of that packaging. And there's always a little bit left at the end. That is also food waste, beauty product waste, whatever you have. And so try to design your packaging and the form of it, and also the instructions that you put on it, to be as clear as possible for consumers to be able to use all of the product. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about labeling, because the way that you explain how to recycle the packaging and how to fold it, how to get all of the product out, all of those different things are super important for the sustainability of the product that you're designing in the packaging. So you might have seen on lots of different packaging that in the back you've got like different certifications, you've got different labels that show the end consumer how to recycle something. And it's really, really important for you as a package designer to get familiar with what these different certifications mean. Some of them, for example, might look like a recycling symbol, but has more to do with if the company itself is supporting sustainable practices, and some of them are actual instructions for how to pick apart the packaging and where to recycle it. Every country has different rules for how you can actually recycle something, which materials, and how to separate them. So for example, in the UK, where I've been living for a long time, they actually have packaging as one type of recycling. So in many places they have paper and plastic together. In Sweden, where I'm from and where I'm currently living, we're recycling much more based on the end consumer making the choices. So here you have to separate it yourself into, for example, colored glass, normal glass, soft plastics, hard plastics. So have a look at the area that you're in, and specifically the area that the product will be distributed and consumed in. And lots of government websites actually have videos and instructions. And if you look in the link in the description, I'm putting the blog post for this week that is covering the same topic of sustainable design for packaging. And there you'll be able to find a video of the UK government talking you through all these different symbols and how to put them on. Symbols are super helpful, but as a designer, it's also your responsibility, or a way for you to help your client to think about other ways to make it even more clear. So if there's space, which I always encourage you to talk to your client about this, try to make some space for a little bit of instruction. So even if you already have the symbol, write out how to recycle this packaging. If you have pieces where you've got multiple materials, like let's say you've got a plastic top and a paper packaging for the rest of it, make little instructions on it, like cut here, or push this thing and then pull it apart, for example. So help your end consumer make it easy for them to recycle the packaging. Before I finish, I also want to talk about one last thing, which is to give your packaging a second life. Because, recycling is great, but reuse comes much, much higher on the list of sustainable actions than recycling. So if you can find a way to give your packaging a second life, that is a really, really good sustainable choice. So you might have seen, for example, examples of drink products being in mason jars that people really think are beautiful. They keep them, they have their coffee in the morning in them. That becomes a great way to reuse the packaging. You can also do things like, for example, if you got a paper packaging, a cereal box, maybe put like a game on the back of it and people can use it as a board game and save it and keep it. And not only are these second use cases a way to make your packaging more sustainable, but it's also a great way to help give your client another area of marketing. Because as these products stand on our shelves, it's actually kind of like an ad in your home, which, is a really, really good way for your client to keep being top of mind in consumers' headspace. I hope you found this video really helpful. If you want more tips for how to grow your creative business, how to become a better designer, and how to enjoy work more, check out all of the other videos in this Agency Academy series. We also have lots of instructions and tips on our blog, and we give up videos once a week. So make sure that you like this video if you thought it was helpful, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you'll see videos every week that we put them out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Good luck with your projects.